There are places where time seems to move differently after tragedy. The streets eventually reopen, the lights come back on, people return to work, and life appears to continue as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet those who were there often describe something impossible to explain. They remember the silence that followed the chaos. They remember looking into the eyes of complete strangers and seeing the very same question reflected back at them. They remember how a single ordinary afternoon became the dividing line between the life they once knew and the life they would carry forever. The shooting at Seattle Center became one of those moments, not simply because lives were lost, but because thousands of others left carrying something invisible, something that no medical report, police investigation, or television broadcast could ever fully describe. Hours before the first emergency call, nothing suggested that history was about to change for the people walking through those streets. Families laughed together. Friends stopped to take photographs without realizing those images would later become painful reminders of a day they wished had unfolded differently. Children were excited by the music, the food, and the celebration surrounding them. Parents were thinking about dinner, work the next morning, or the drive home. Everything felt wonderfully ordinary, and perhaps that is what makes tragedies so unsettling. They never announce their arrival. They do not ask permission before interrupting lives. They simply appear without warning, reminding every human being that certainty is often nothing more than an illusion we quietly create to make tomorrow feel guaranteed. When the first shots echoed through the crowd, the atmosphere changed in an instant. A place filled with conversation became a landscape of confusion. Joy gave way to fear. People who had never met suddenly found themselves running side by side, protecting children who were not their own, helping injured strangers whose names they would never know, and searching desperately for loved ones whose phones no longer answered. It is remarkable how quickly the human heart changes under extraordinary circumstances. In ordinary moments, we notice differences, our language, our beliefs, our background. In moments of survival, those differences disappear. There is only one instinct left: preserve life. That silent transformation reveals something profound about humanity. Beneath every identity we carry, there exists a deeper bond that often remains hidden until life itself is threatened. Yet, the most enduring consequences of violence rarely remain where violence occurred. They travel home with those who survived. They enter quiet bedrooms where sleep no longer comes easily. They return unexpectedly through the sound of fireworks, a crowded street, or a sudden noise that brings back memories no one invited. Trauma does not always announce itself. Sometimes it speaks through silence. Sometimes it appears as hesitation before entering a public place. Sometimes it is felt in the embrace of a parent who now holds a child a little tighter than before. These invisible scars often receive far less attention than the tragedy itself, even though they continue shaping lives long after television cameras have moved on to another headline. There is another question that emerges whenever the world witnesses suffering on this scale. Why does the pain of strangers affect people living thousands of miles away? Why do millions who never visited Seattle pause their daily routine, whisper a prayer, send words of comfort, or simply sit in silence after hearing the news? Perhaps the answer reveals one of the greatest truths about human existence. We are far more connected than we imagine. Every act of compassion reaches farther than we can measure. Every moment of hatred leaves consequences that extend beyond the people directly involved. The invisible world of thoughts, emotions, and intentions quietly shapes the visible world more than we often realize. Long before societies are transformed by laws or governments, they are transformed by the condition of the human heart. That is where every lasting change truly begins. Long after the emergency vehicles leave and investigators finish documenting every visible detail, another process quietly begins. It has no official report, no closing statement, and no courtroom where its conclusions are announced. It unfolds inside the minds of those who were there. A single sound suddenly carries a different meaning. A crowded square no longer feels ordinary. The route someone walked hundreds of times before now awakens a feeling they cannot explain. Memory has a remarkable way of preserving emotion with extraordinary precision. It remembers not only what happened, but how the air felt, how voices sounded, and how quickly an ordinary moment disappeared forever. This is why some wounds remain hidden. They are carried in silence, often by people who appear perfectly fine to everyone around them. Many survivors of tragedies describe something that seems almost impossible to put into words. Time itself begins behaving differently. A few seconds feel like endless minutes. Small details that should have been forgotten remain perfectly clear years later, while entire conversations disappear from memory. The human mind instinctively protects itself, preserving certain fragments while gently hiding others beyond immediate reach. It is neither weakness nor failure. It is part of the extraordinary way people endure experiences that exceed anything they ever imagined facing. Healing, therefore, is rarely about forgetting. Genuine healing allows painful memories to exist without allowing them to dictate every future decision. What often receives less attention is the invisible chain of kindness that quietly emerges during moments of profound crisis. News reports usually focus on the violence itself, yet countless acts of courage unfold beyond the cameras. A stranger shields a frightened child. Someone with no medical training kneels beside an injured person simply to make sure they are not alone. Families open their homes to people unable to return safely. Volunteers spend endless hours helping complete strangers without asking their names or expecting recognition. These moments rarely become headlines, but they reveal something remarkable. Humanity possesses an instinct just as powerful as fear, the instinct to protect, comfort, and restore. Even when darkness arrives unexpectedly, compassion begins working almost immediately, often in the quietest ways imaginable. Perhaps this explains why acts of goodness leave such a lasting impression after tragedy. Violence captures attention because it shocks us, but compassion remains in memory because it reminds us who we are capable of becoming. Every sincere embrace offered to someone in pain pushes back against despair. Every word of encouragement interrupts the loneliness grief tries to create. Every prayer spoken in silence, regardless of one's tradition or beliefs, becomes a declaration that suffering will not have the final word. These gestures may appear small when compared with the magnitude of a tragedy, yet history repeatedly shows that communities are rebuilt not only through concrete and steel, but through countless invisible acts of human kindness performed one person at a time. There's also a quiet lesson hidden beneath events like Seattle, one that rarely receives attention because it asks each person to look inward instead of outward. Every day we cross paths with people carrying burdens we know nothing about. Some are grieving losses that remain invisible. Others are struggling with fears they have never spoken aloud. A simple conversation, an unexpected smile, or a moment of genuine patience may become far more significant than we will ever realize. We often imagine that changing the world requires extraordinary actions, yet history suggests something different. The character of a society is shaped first by ordinary people making ordinary choices with extraordinary compassion. Long before nations change, hearts do, and every lasting transformation begins there. There is another reality that rarely appears in documentaries or news coverage. The greatest battles often begin after the sirens fade into the distance. They take place in complete silence, inside people who wake up every morning trying to convince themselves that life has returned to normal. Outwardly, they go back to work, answer messages, smile during conversations, and follow familiar routines. Inwardly, however, something has changed forever. A crowded event now feels different. A sudden loud noise causes the heart to race before the mind even understands why. Places that once represented joy become reminders of vulnerability. Trauma has a way of reshaping the landscape of everyday life without changing a single building, a single street, or a single face. Everything looks the same, yet nothing feels exactly as it did before. Perhaps this happens because human beings are not affected only by what they see. Every experience leaves an emotional imprint, and some moments become so powerful that they continue echoing long after they have passed. We often underestimate the influence of our inner world because it cannot be measured with instruments or displayed on a screen. Yet every decision we make is shaped by thoughts, emotions, and memories quietly working beneath the surface. Fear influences choices just as hope does. Bitterness changes the way we see others just as compassion changes the way we respond to suffering. Long before actions become visible, they begin as invisible movements within the heart. This silent process unfolds every day, whether we are aware of it or not. For that reason, every tragedy presents humanity with a choice that extends far beyond the event itself. Pain can become a seed that grows into anger, distrust, and division, or it can awaken a deeper awareness of how precious every human life truly is. History offers examples of both paths. Entire communities have been consumed by resentment after experiencing violence. Others discovered within the same suffering an extraordinary capacity to unite support one another, and rebuild with greater wisdom than before. The difference rarely lies in the tragedy itself. It lies in the response that follows. Darkness always attempts to multiply itself, but so does kindness. Every compassionate act weakens the influence of fear, even when the results cannot be immediately seen. It is remarkable how often people remember the smallest gestures after surviving extraordinary circumstances. Many cannot recall every detail of the chaos, yet they never forget the stranger who reached out a hand, the person who stayed beside them while they waited for help, or the voice that calmly reminded them they were not alone. These moments reveal something profound. Human beings are created not only to survive, but also to care for one another. In the middle of confusion, compassion becomes a form of strength. It restores a sense of dignity precisely when everything else feels uncertain. Sometimes one quiet act of kindness remains in someone's memory far longer than the violence that made it necessary. This may be one of the greatest responsibilities carried by every person who witnesses suffering, whether directly or from afar. The world does not become a better place simply because tragedies receive attention. It changes when those tragedies inspire people to live differently afterward, speaking with greater patience, loving without postponing affection, forgiving before pride builds impossible walls, offering encouragement to someone who quietly feels forgotten, choosing peace when anger appears easier. These decisions rarely become headlines, yet they shape the future in ways statistics can never fully capture. Every society is ultimately built from countless ordinary hearts making ordinary choices, and it is within those unseen choices that the deepest transformations quietly begin. Eventually, the headlines begin to disappear. News channels move on to the next breaking story. Social media fills with new conversations. The world continues its relentless pace as it always does. Yet for the families whose lives were forever changed, time follows a different rhythm. Birthdays arrive with an empty chair at the table. Holidays carry memories that words cannot fully express. Familiar places awaken emotions that appear without warning. Life continues, but it no longer resembles the life that existed before that single day. The calendar keeps moving forward, while the heart slowly learns that healing is not the absence of sorrow. Healing is discovering that love can continue existing alongside grief without one destroying the other. Perhaps this is why moments like Seattle leave such a lasting mark on humanity. They remind us that life has never truly belonged to our schedules, our ambitions, or our plans. We often behave as though tomorrow has already been promised, postponing conversations that need to happen today, delaying forgiveness until another opportunity presents itself, and assuming there will always be more time to embrace the people we love. Then reality quietly interrupts those assumptions. Without asking permission, it reminds us that every ordinary morning is far more extraordinary than we usually recognize. The greatest treasures of life are rarely the ones people spend decades trying to acquire. More often, they are the simple moments we overlook because we mistakenly believe they will always be there. There is another lesson hidden beneath every tragedy, one that cannot be measured by statistics or explained through investigations alone. Every human being leaves behind something far greater than possessions, achievements, or public recognition. We leave fragments of ourselves inside the lives we touch. A word of encouragement offered at the right moment may continue echoing in someone's heart for years. A simple act of kindness may become the reason another person chooses hope instead of despair. Compassion has an extraordinary way of multiplying long after the original gesture has been forgotten by the one who offered it. In that sense, every life creates ripples extending far beyond what the eyes can see. Some ripples are born from anger, others are born from love. Every day, each of us quietly decides which ones we will leave behind. The same invisible principle applies to the thoughts we cultivate within ourselves. Fear naturally seeks to reproduce fear. Hatred encourages more hatred. Resentment quietly asks to remain alive through future actions. Yet peace possesses the very same ability. Hope inspires hope. Mercy encourages mercy. A heart that refuses to surrender completely to bitterness becomes a source of light for people it may never even meet. Throughout history, entire communities have recovered, because ordinary men and women chose not to allow pain to become the final chapter of their story. Instead of permitting darkness to define their future, they transformed suffering into compassion, remembrance into wisdom, and loss into a renewed appreciation for the fragile gift of being alive. Perhaps no investigation will ever answer every question surrounding a tragedy like this. Some answers belong to the legal system, others belong to history. Still others remain within the quiet reflections each person carries long after the cameras have disappeared. Yet one truth continues revealing itself generation after generation. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to become more patient than yesterday, more compassionate than fear expects us to be, and more aware that every encounter may matter far more than we realize. The world changes through decisions that often appear invisible in the moment. A comforting embrace, a sincere prayer, a word spoken with kindness instead of anger, a choice to love when indifference would have been easier. These are the quiet victories that never dominate the headlines, yet they are often the victories that shape humanity far more profoundly than any tragedy ever could.